soy Gustavo. Queremos transformar la construcción de hogares en una experiencia inolvidable. Y para ello, creamos Tu Casa en 8 Pasos, un podcast basado en nuestro proceso de construcción, en donde cada episodio invitaremos expertos a platicar de lo que necesitas saber para lograr la casa de tus sueños. ¿Estás listo? ¡Comencemos!
Hello, welcome back to our interviews. Today, I'm speaking in English. I'm sorry for the pronunciation. We're going to talk about something really important for the second step in our 8-step process, that is the acquisition of property. Today, I introduce you to Mariana Rodríguez. She is partner of Maxlife Yucatán. Maxlife Yucatán have 6 years of experience advising and helping foreigners to acquire properties here in Mexico. She have helped more than 1,000 foreigners to acquire or the properties or residence here in Yucatán. Welcome here, Mariana, and thank you for the time.
Thank you. Also, happy to be here.
Tell me a little bit what inspired you to make this company and to help the foreigners to acquire properties and the nationality in Mexico.
Sure. So when we started, and actually when I was younger, I always had friends who were foreigners. Actually, a lot of them have moved to live here, or they come and go, 6 months and 6 months. And so I always saw the challenges that they had trying to get their papers or trying to deal with bureaucracy here in Mexico. And so I thought, when I studied law, I said, it can't be that difficult for them. There has to be a way to make it easier. I actually worked at immigration for a while, and I also saw that they didn't explain things like they should, and so the foreigners or my friends had so many questions, and they always talked bad about Mexico in general, and I thought that was impossible. So when I finished law, I decided to create Maxlife because this is a company that helps foreigners to be able to live in Mexico, to know their obligations, to know exactly what they can do with the residency, and especially now to buy a property without having problems. We've always had clients that maybe they signed something that was not correct, or they didn't explain to them how it was that they should buy, and then all the process ended up being a nightmare. So at Maxlife, we want to avoid that. We want to make it a joyful process so that they come back and they can not only live in Mexico and have a great experience, but also come and buy more properties and help with the economy.
Okay, perfect, Mariana. And I want to ask you, for the people that come, what are the most common takes that they do when they come to Mexico and they look around, they love the country, and they want to buy a land to build their house? What are the most common things that happen and that make it the worst experience, or the experience that they don't want to live here anymore?
Yes, well, we've actually seen a lot of those, but I would say the main mistake is that they don't get professional help from a lawyer. And sometimes I've heard clients that say, you don't need that necessarily, you don't need a lawyer. But I've seen clients sign certain documents like the promissory document of agreement, where they promise certain things that is not their responsibility. For example, in Mexico, we have a certain property tax, and that property tax is paid by the owner of the property. Even if you sign a promissory contract that you're gonna buy the property in the future, you're not supposed to be paying that property tax until you're the owner. But we've seen contracts where they promise this, or for example, they never explain to them how to buy, and so it has become a nightmare trying to solve the problems that from the beginning, from the moment they said, that is gonna be my house, I love it. If we would have been protected, they would have loved the experience, but it has become, like you said, a nightmare for some of them, unfortunately.
Okay, perfect. And that leads me to other question, no? What are the ways that a foreigner can buy a land here in Mexico? And here in Mexico, because of the history of the country, we have a restricting law of the coast and the frontiers. So tell me a little bit of this law and what restrictions does it have, and which instruments the foreigners can use to buy.
Yes. So for those of you that don't know, and maybe you know it already, we have in our main law, our constitution, a law that says that no foreigner or foreign company can directly buy in Mexico within certain kilometers from coast, so which is 50 kilometers from a coast, or 100 kilometers from borders.
That the kilometer for a mile is 1.6 kilometers per mile, so for the conversion.
Exactly. And so if you look at Mexico, it's pretty much, we're close to a lot of coast. We're close to 2 borders, or almost 3. So it is quite a restriction, especially buying here in Yucatán, where normally foreigners love the beach area. It's a restriction. Now, how do we go around this? There's a lot of methods. The first method would be using a bank trust. And this bank trust pretty much helps that the seller passes this property to a bank on a trust, and then the buyer becomes the beneficiary. So that means that even though you're not the owner on the title per se, you're the sole beneficiary. And that means that if you want to rent it out, build, sell it in the future, it is your property to use. Mm-hmm. We also have the other way, which is buying through a company. And really here, when a client comes to us and they like a property, I really like to ask, why do you want to buy? Because most of them come and say, I want to do a company. But if you're buying for your personal house, you're only buying one property, it's very beneficial to use a trust.
Okay.
Because when you want to sell, you could exempt the capital gain tax. And also it works as a will because you can leave beneficiaries in case of death. Now with the company, it is a good option if you want to buy various properties because you can put them all under one company. The only thing you have to have in mind, which would be a con, is that you have to have a partner. In Mexico, companies can't be of a sole owner. It has to be at least 2. So like for example, if your wife or husband or family member or a trusted friend is going to be a partner in that company, then that's good. But if you don't have anybody, those houses belong to all the partners of the company. Mm-hmm. So it could be a risk. And as well, when you sell, because a company is selling, you wouldn't be able to exempt the capital gain tax. So it really depends on what you want to do in the future in regards to these properties and how many you want to buy. We're not married to one or the other, the trust or the company. Mm-hmm. It really matters what you want to do.
Okay, you told me when we were drinking coffee this week that you need a responsible here in Mexico, like for your company, if you're a foreigner, you need a responsible person that is from Mexico?
Exactly. So for example, a question that a lot of our clients have is, do I have to be a resident so I can buy with a Fideicomiso, with a trust, or with a company? And no, you don't. Neither to be a partner in a company nor to buy through a trust. But for example, if you do a company, you can be a member of the company. But if you're not a resident, you can't represent that company before what we will call IRS, which is our tax office. So that also brings certain complications because you really have to trust that legal representative that's gonna help filing your taxes, represent you before the tax office. So it really comes to, do I have someone that I can trust enough? Okay. And if not, it's better to go for the residency so that you can represent your own company.
So if you're a resident, you can be the representative of the company. Exactly. But if you are just a tourist, you cannot be the representative of the company for the SAT, no?
Exactly.
Okay, yeah. Perfect. And what about a company from the US? I make an LLC in the US and I want to buy a property here in Mexico. What about that case?
Yes, that's a very good option too. Remember that our main law says that no foreign company can directly own. So a foreign LLC can own a property through a bank trust. The benefit of this, we would say, is that if you want to sell the company in the States that owns the property, you would only have to do a movement in the States, or for example, in your country of origin. And here, only notify the bank that the LLC that owns the property through the trust changed representatives. That means that you wouldn't have to mingle with taxes and a notary here in Mexico. Now, it is important to note that right now, not every bank will let you do that. They're trying to get rid of those, but it could be a good strategy if you're thinking of selling it back in your home country.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's great. So there are 3 ways. The one that it's the most difficult is the one from an LLC of the United States or another country. You can make an SA here in Mexico, but you need a partner, or you can make a trust. That is the easiest if you just want to buy one property.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, perfect. And if you're a resident, it helps you out because you don't need a representative with SAT.
Exactly.
Okay,
Very
perfect. And the costs, no? A lot of, I think it is important to know how much will it cost for a foreigner to acquire a property here in difference of Mexican, no? And still, what is the total cost for a foreigner too?
Exactly. So also a very good question. So all of us, Mexican, foreigners, we all have to go through a notary. A notary here in Mexico is the one that gives faith and that will register your title at the public registry, making it legal.
And something important that you were talking about the other day is that here is really difficult to have a notary, no? The state give you a number of certain notaries, and in the US it's easier to be the representative, no?
Yeah, in the States it's, for example, very usual to have people being notaries that give faith. But here in Mexico, you have to be a notary to be able to register titles of purchase of properties. So being a notary, you have to pay taxes. There's registration fees for the title. There's also the notary fees for what they do for you, and also certain taxes. There's a tax when you buy a property, which is around 3%. So we always tell clients that are even Mexicans, try to think about a 5% of the total value of sale of the property for the notary. Now, that's everyone, Mexicans and foreigners. What's the difference between foreigners? For example, if you do a bank trust, there's certain other institutions that we have to make a payment for. And for example, the first one would be the Secretary of Foreign Affairs.
Okay.
This is the institution that gives us a permit to be able to create a trust. This permit could be around 20 to 28,000 pesos. We have to always check which bank can be able to help us with the fiduciary, which means this is the bank that will hold our trust. And this bank, the first time, asks you to pay a fee to accept the trust and also a first annual fee in advance. Okay. And this could be around 1,000 US, the acceptance and the annual fee. The next years, you will only pay around $500 as an annual fee for administration of the fiduciary bank.
Okay, and this trust is just for the coast and the borders, no?
Exactly.
If you buy without this law restriction, you can just buy the land even though you are a foreigner?
Exactly, yes. The only thing that you would have to do, and this is done with the notary or with us, is called a convenio de renuncia. And pretty much this is done with the Secretary of Foreign Affairs. And this is that you're renouncing the help of your country in anything that has to do with the property.
Okay.
So the Secretary of Foreign Affairs is always entangled in this type of process with the foreigners, even if you're outside of restricted zone or inside. But we always want to make sure that we're using the best strategy according to our case.
Okay, perfect. So we're making the resume of this. If you are out of the restriction border, you just have to pay the foreigners affair document that is not that expensive, I guess.
No, it's around like 5,000 to 6,000 Mexican pesos.
Okay, it
like
will be
$200.
like $200, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have to pay a 5% to the notary.
Yes, exactly.
That's all.
That's it.
It costs almost the same as a Mexican.
Exactly.
If you're in this border of the coast or the borders of the country, then you will have to make the trust. That the trust, you said it will be like?
I would say it's around 30, you would pay around, let's put really a lot, 50,000 pesos, 40 to 50,000 pesos for the trust process, and the 4% to 5% for the notary.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's great. And an important question, no? What is different of being just going, if I am a foreigner and I come to Mexico and I just want to buy a property, why wouldn't I go just with the notary and make the whole process there? Why should I contact you, or why should I have an advisor here in Mexico to help me out with this process?
That's a great question. So I always like to tell that to my clients. You know, we're not notaries. We can't give faith of process, but it's very useful to have a representative. And the reason is because The notary will be a part of all the process at the end, when it's time to register your title, to sign it, in the end of the process. The broker and the developer or the seller will be at the beginning. And that is when you have to set the rules and regulations from the moment you give a down payment till the moment you go with the notary. So all that time normally is when we faced clients that have had problems, because maybe in the promissory, which is this document that you sign when you give a down payment, they promised things that were not their responsibility, or there were penalties that could have been avoided if all parties understood really what was the buying process, what was the best buying process. And so, we always say, brokers have their job, it's looking for your ideal property. Developers or sellers, have their job, they provide it, and the notary has their job. But we make sure everybody does their job in the right way, everybody knows their responsibilities, and that you don't end up hating your property, but actually have a joyful process and maybe want to buy another one in the future. Why not?
That's great. And another thing I think I will be that notaries normally work with persons from Mexico, no?
Yes.
With Mexicans.
Yes.
You're an expertise in working with foreigners, no? You don't help any Mexican to buy a property here because it's not necessary. You work with the foreigners, no?
Exactly right, yeah.
So we'll put a map here. If you look at this map, the area that is highlighted, it's the area that you will have to make a trust.
Yes.
If you are not in that area, then you just have to make the letter for the
Secretary of Foreign Affairs.
Secretary of Foreign Affairs, and that's a far easier process to acquire a property here in Mexico.
Yeah, definitely.
Tell me the worst experience you have seen, a client that didn't have help or had bad help from someone, and that you took the process at the middle and you had to help them out.
Okay, I have a lot, but I have one that actually just recently, last week, we end up signing. To give you a little background, this person contacted me at the middle, yes, not at the beginning of the process. I wish he had, but I met him and he explained to me a little bit that he had started paying this property, and I won't say names, it was a developer here in Mérida. He started paying for this property in 2016, and he finished paying it in 2019. This is pre-pandemic. And we just signed it last week.
Whoa.
So what happened was, for starters, this person, this client, is not living in Mexico. He actually never came back. He saw the property, he loved it, and he said, I want it for myself, signed the promissory, and left. He paid in time and form, but nobody explained to him what a Fideicomiso or a bank trust was. Yes, the promissory had it there in written, but he didn't know what that was. So when the pandemic came, he kind of let it go, came to us and said, I want to register this property because it's been a while. So we started checking. He didn't have the payments in form. We had to investigate to try to get them. The company didn't want to give us receipts of payments, so we had to really fight with them to be able to get that. As well, in the promissory, they had also wrote down that he had the obligation of paying, first of all, HOA dues and the property tax from the moment he signed the promissory.
Wow.
This is 5 years, and this is super illegal because really...
He's not the owner.
Yes, exactly. The owner is supposed to be paying this until you get the property, and then you pay your HOA dues, and especially the property tax. So, at the moment of actually... getting ready to be able to sign, he had to pay so much more money, and he hates the property. Right now that we signed it, I said, at least use the amenities. It's been so long, and he's like, I hate it. I just want to sell it, and I don't want to come back to Mexico anymore. So it was a very stressful process. The company also didn't respond always, so I can understand how frustrated he could be. But many of these things could have been avoided if at the beginning he could have understood really how was the process, what was really his responsibility and not his responsibility. And so we fought for those rights, and finally he didn't give up, although he wanted to, but it was a really, really hard experience.
Mm-hmm. At the end, thanks God it wasn't a fraud, but he could have feel like he wasn't a fraud, no?
Yeah, definitely. He did feel like that, and it was really sad because he loved the property when he saw it, but that's what happens a little bit when, you know, we don't have the right assistance, and you know, it happens.
4 years. 4 years or almost 5 years, and he paid the last payment, and that he acquired the property.
Exactly.
And he have been paying this whole time for the
property taxes and the HOA dues. Crazy.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yes.
So thank you, Mariana. We'll leave your links below of your social media. But where can people contact you?
Well, you can send us a message at our number, WhatsApp number that will be below, or also you can follow us on @Maxlife Yucatán on Instagram and send us an email so that we can definitely help you with all this. And thank you so much for inviting me today.
Thank you very much. I hope the information that we talked today is useful to you to find your dream house or to buy your dream house here in Mexico. And we'll keep posting more information that will help you in this 8-step process to build your dream home. Thank you very much. See you next time. Ciao.